Well, hello there, beautiful. It's Kylie Patchett here. Welcome to the Wild and Finally Pecking Free podcast. I deeply believe that the years during and beyond perimenopause are a rite of passage. All of a sudden, we find ourselves on the precipice of a life transition where our brain literally rewires and runs out of fucks to give. We find ourselves shifting identity, no longer caring what other people think, and being invited to expand into new ways of being. Here, we share the real and raw stories from women who've been through deep midlife metamorphosis, taken a leap of faith, or broken the ties that bind us in patterns of staying small, stuck, and like our needs just don't matter. This is the midlife medicine you didn't even know you needed. Stories full of joy, despair, freedom, courage, and deep self-honoring. I am so glad you found us. Welcome. Hello. I am very, very excited for this next guest. I have got the beautiful Dr. Heather Paulson with me. We've tried to schedule this a couple of times, and as I was just sharing with you before we came on, this is perfect timing from a personal perspective. So hello and welcome to the Wild and Finally Freaking Free podcast. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
This is a reconnection for us. We were just discussing, we were in a business program, and we went on a retreat in Bali. We just worked out it was 8 or 9 years ago. I'm not really sure. And we haven't really, had a conversation. Well, we have stayed connected on social media, but I haven't, been on top of where you are in the world. And then I put out a thing about this podcast, and you were like, yep, I want to share my story. So tell me, what part of midlife metamorphosis or breaking the ties that bound did you go, yeah, this is what I want to talk about?
Yeah. Why did I say I wanted to talk about this? I am a little bit nervous, to be honest, about sharing this story because I haven't been super publicly honest about this transformational process.
Wow.
I have held that space for many people of naturopathic oncologist, really being a rock in their own traumatic experience.
Yeah.
And at some point I was going through my own trauma, my own traumatic experience while holding the space for other people. And I'm sure people listening can relate that when you are the rock for other people who are going through trauma, it's really hard to share your own story. I mean, it's so easy for me to share my own story around cancer and why I got into cancer, but sharing my own story about wild and finally fucking free, that is a little bit more challenging. But when you put out the call of what you were up to, I was like, I know that there's so many people that can relate to what I've been through. And I don't want to be in the closet about this experience. I don't want to be another woman hiding what has made us wild and free. Like this is so, so important for all of us to find that little sliver of freedom within ourselves so that we can nurture and grow into, it sounds cheesy, but like the life that I'm living, the life that I always wanted, but never thought was possible for me. So to come through that tunnel of trauma and emerge into something that I didn't even know my heart desired is what it means to be wild and free for me. And so I'm nervous and excited to share my story with you and your listeners.
Thank you. I actually didn't realize that until we started chatting, and I just want to deeply honor that. My really heartfelt intention with this storytelling of this podcast is to do exactly what you have just talked about, is that women coming out of hiding and sharing their truth, and is such a transformative thing. I've got full body shivers happening. So I just want to honor your nerves and thank you for the sharing that is about to unfold, because I know that it's going to be deeply healing for the people that hear the message of this. And I also really want to capture this trauma tunnel language that you just used, because I really deeply feel that there are so many of these stories that I've already recorded. There is this big, what's the heroine's journey, right? You're going along and life is peachy, or at least we think it's peachy, and then some big shit happens and the trauma forces us to put our lives and our hearts under a magnifying glass and invites us to be truthful with ourselves. And I just think, knowing the little bit that I already know about this story, I know that the courage and also this magical life that you're living is because of that trauma tunnel. And that's the blessing, right? At the time, it feels like we're in the messy genetic soup of the cocoon stage, and it's shitty and uncomfortable and horrible and all those things. But look at you now. So let's dive in. Okay. All right. Where would you like to start? On whatever level that you would be happy to share, what was the turning point for you where your life that you thought was going along swimmingly wasn't so swimming anymore?
Yeah. Well, I considered, and I still consider myself, and this is something that I work on, somebody who sees my life through rosy glasses, or someone who sees the glass half full, right? And there's a beauty to that. And there's also an opportunity to miss what is really going on when you're constantly seeing your life through rose-colored glasses. So a lot of my journey has been a slam into like, oh, this is what's really happening. I didn't know that was the truth of what's happening in my life. And I was constantly trying to improve myself and constantly seeing things through that positive lens, and constantly going to growth workshops like, Tony Robbins, and reading all the books, and self-development was like a full-time job for me. So through the lens of all of those things, which I don't think are inherently bad, but for me, it blocked my ability to receive and perceive what was really happening in my life. So that aha moment for me happened very abruptly. I was going through fertility treatments. My husband at the time had cancer when we were 25. We had gone through that journey together. We had been together for 20 years. And I was at a business conference having fun with some of my business friends. And I came home from the conference and all of his stuff was gone. And I had no idea that he had another life, that he was packing up his stuff and moving out. I'm a doctor, so I knew he was experiencing anxiety. I knew he was experiencing depression. And I knew that he was drinking too much alcohol for many years. And I confronted him on particularly the alcohol when we were going through fertility treatments. And I think that created some discomfort in our relationship. And that was that. Like, he just up and left and basically ghosted me after 20 years of our relationship. I didn't know where he was, how to get a hold of him. He had all of our banking accounts, so I had no money. I had no access to money. So for the first time in my life, I was worried about how I was going to buy groceries, how I was going to pay my mortgage. Like, we had a shared bank account, but I wasn't wise, and I was over trusting maybe in retrospect. And so I would just take, his debit card out of his wallet and go to the ATM and put the pin in. And, it didn't like bother me that I didn't have my own access to things. And yeah, so that was a game changer for me. I had to pause. And right before he left, like literally 2 days before he packed his stuff and moved, a tree fell on our house in a major storm.
Oh my goodness.
And totaled my car and crushed part of our house, like crushed half of our house. So I also didn't have a car. So I had no access to transportation. Like I was just like stuck in my house being like, how did I get here? I have a doctorate degree and I'm like stuck in a house with no food, not knowing how I'm going to pay electricity, and I can't get to work like without an Uber or something. So I was in shock, and I have always believed that I'm divinely protected, that I am divinely supported. And one of the things that came to mind during one of my meditation practices, maybe 3 or 4 days before Phil packed his stuff up and left, was a little like blip of like, what would you do if Phil wasn't around anymore? Like, what is your biggest fear about this person not being present anymore? And one of the fears that popped in, which sounds kind of maybe lame or material, was like, I was worried about my car because my car was really old and it was starting to break down and it wasn't like a great form of transportation. So I was mostly worried about my car. And then this storm comes and totals my car as he moves out. And that was just really, and like the universe was like, okay, fine, we will take care of that. Here's your totaled car. Here's your brand new car. We got you on that. Okay, what else? And that was like little pieces of grace along the way when I was totally in shock. But that is how things were so dramatic. One of my friends was so great to put into perspective, like things had to be this dramatic. Otherwise, I would never have seen it, or I might have seen it, but I would have, like Tony Robbins did away. I would have done some type of positive affirmation. And
we'll transform this into a silver lining.
Yeah. And I would have taken on responsibility for somebody else's human experience. That's not my responsibility. And I had to look at some patterns that were really rich in codependency and really rich in over positivity, spiritual bypassing, like all of those things that are, I think, part of that pre-trauma tunnel. And the trauma tunnel allowed me to see my life more clearly.
Oh my goodness. Oh, Heather, so many things I want to say. I have, like, as you're talking and you're going, he packed up and then there was a storm and then there was the car and then there was the money and then there was this and then this. I had this image in my head of this big, beautiful universe just going, here's your life. And I'm just making a clean sweep across the top of it. And it reminds me of something I saw on Instagram today, and I don't even remember who it was, but it was basically saying, the bigger the dream, the bigger the divinity that is meant to unfold in our life, the bigger the shadow, right? So if you imagine the person who was being interviewed had a water bottle, and he's like, just imagine this is your dream, and the sun hits the water bottle, and the bigger the water bottle, the bigger the shadow, right? And that was that. And this is what I'm getting the feeling of, is like the trauma intense, and it's like not just one little thing. We're going to call into question everything. What is going on with your sense of, I actually want to ask about security, but probably also sense of self. So when you're going through the questioning of obviously you're going through a lot of, how did this happen? What did I do to create, that sort of stuff. And you're invited down the normal track of spiritual bypassing. How did you know not to do it again? Hey gorgeous, we interrupt this gold for a delicious invitation. If your whole body has been whispering more lately, more voice, more truth, more satisfaction, more clients of the soulmate variety, more cash, more you, then this invitation is for you. Potent, my sister mind is officially open. This is my high touch, holy fuck, I'm ready sister mind for rebels in good girl clothing who are done outsourcing their power and diluting their magic to fit into someone else's business formula. If you have been craving a space where your strategy, your voice, and your energy all get to be offered, honored, refined, and amplified, this is it. Inside of Potent, you'll get my eyes on your business every single week, copy mentoring, and that is for brand copy and content storytelling that turns your truth into client catnip, energetic recalibration that helps you unhook old learned limitation patterns, keeping you quiet, not being seen, not being heard, real-time, high-touch, one-on-one coaching that actually sees the bigness of your vision, and the kind of sisterhood that does not flinch when you show up in your full, messy, brilliant, phoenix rising from the ashes glory. This isn't surface level support. It's deep, potent, paradigm shifting work that changes who you are as a woman in business and a woman in life. We start in August. Early open access is open right now. For the month of June 2025, inside of this early access open doors period, you will receive juicy bonuses, extended payment plans, and access immediately to my entire library of storytelling gold. You'll find all the juicy details at kyliepatchett.com/potent. And we fill spaces, and there's only 10 of them, and more than likely only 5 by the time you listen to this, because by that time I will have offered them to the existing cohort, the beautiful original OG circle. We do actually take applications on a first come, first served basis. So come and apply, and let's get back to the magic of the episode.
I think at that point I had no choice.
Yeah.
I had no choice. Like I could not positively affirm my way out of that situation.
Yeah.
I mean, there was just, it would be so dishonoring to myself to be like, oh, well, here's the bright side of this. No, it would be so dishonoring. And I see now in retrospect of life, and when I talk to younger people who are coming for what I'm doing now,
yes,
it's so important to me to pass on like these little nuggets of, you know, just see your life for what it is. Yes. Positive, negative, all of it. Like one of my favorite songs right now is by Nessie Gomez, and she talks about shadows and diamonds and how they both have a place, right? And so shadows are so powerful, and there's so much magic in the shadow. There's so much information in the shadow. And it was just not a space that was really supported in the spiritual practices and the spiritual techniques that I was studying.
Yes.
In the business mentors that I had hired, I don't know, like I just basically every aspect of my life, I had set it up where I thought I was like, okay with shadow work because I worked with people who had stage 4 cancer. My patients were often dying. So I'm super comfortable with death and dying and underworld kind of things in my spiritual life. So I thought that meant that I was recognizing shadow work. And I got a real introduction into shadow work when this had happened in my life, when literally everything kind of fell to pieces. And I call it like the great implosion that happened in my life. Not an explosion. It was fully inward. Like it was a great implosion into myself of like, whoa, what lies have I been telling myself? What behaviors have I been accepting that are totally not acceptable? What ways have I been explaining away people's bad behavior or bad treatment of me? Where have I taken on their emotional burden? I just had to do it. It hit me right away. Like the way that I dealt with it is I immediately shifted my house. Like as soon as he moved out, I did all of the house projects that I'd been begging us to do for like a decade. So I painted all the walls white. Wow. I created this totally clear, clean sanctuary. I tiled, I did all the things that were being put off in that home space. And part of that was because half of my house was crushed. So I had to make movement on those things. And so in creating that new space at the same time that I was painting my house and creating the new space, I was also listening to an audio book called The New Codependency by Melody Beattie, and really doing a deep dive into this pattern of codependency that I had really carried since childhood and had learned in childhood, growing up in a household where my sister had a meth addiction and she was older than me, and it really colored my childhood and my upbringing. And so I thought that I knew better. Like I thought that I knew more than I did. So I think there was just a great humbling of what I really know and didn't know about myself, or what I was unwilling to acknowledge about myself until everything imploded.
Heather, you are speaking so much of the truth that I'm living in at the moment in terms of the codependency. This was actually one of the things that I really wanted to dive into with you, because my experience as a child, so I didn't have a sister with a meth addiction. I had a mother with a very intense mental illness, and I have dealt with her suicide attempt since the age of 8. So that was my reality. And I thought, like you, I understand codependency. I've done all this healing, blah, blah, blah. But I was absolutely doing a very similar process of just overgiving, overstepping, over trauma bonding, particularly with that person, but being resentful and pissy and angry on the inside, but then directing that towards myself because it's not safe to direct it to the person that's really about. And so I have only really just been honest with myself, and it's actually in my face at the moment because I'm actually dealing with my mum a lot because my stepdad has Alzheimer's, as we were talking about. And so, yeah, it's up in my grill. So having this conversation is perfect timing for me. What were the keys for you to unraveling the codependency tendencies? Like, you have this awareness, okay. And so actually, no, one step backwards. With your husband and the alcohol and the whatever, did it have parallels to what you experienced in childhood? And so it was very familiar. So it's a comfortable, uncomfortable.
He was such a high functioning alcoholic.
Yeah.
So he's very successful in his work and very dedicated to working and worked a lot of hours. And so he wasn't even really home that much to like drink that much. But I knew, because of my training, that he was going through too many beers per week. He was going through a case of beer and a case and a half a week. And that was just what he was drinking at home. And he was also going to happy hours and stuff with work. So I knew, like, that's for a man who has a history of cancer, of lymphoma, that's too many beers. That's putting him at risk.
Absolutely.
And so I knew that, but it wasn't until he moved out, and one of my really good friends, I'm grateful that I'm also always surrounded by really intelligent people to help me on my path.
Yes.
And one of my friends, who is an acupuncturist and a PhD in acupuncture, he was like, you know, your husband's an alcoholic, right? And I was like, no, I don't know.
That's confronting.
I didn't know that. And he's like, and you know, your husband's a narcissist, right? And I was like, no, he's not. And he's like, my friend is like, do you want me to pull out the ICD-10 and read it to you? Like, you know what a narcissist is. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I took psychology. Hello. Like, I know the ICD-10 criteria for a narcissist. Yeah. Absolutely. I don't need you to pull out the book and read it to me. He's like, oh, well, I'm going to go ahead and do it anyways. And like starts reading me the ICD-10 criteria for diagnosing somebody with narcissism. And I was like, sitting in my clinic, you know, he worked in my clinic as well. And I was sitting in the lobby of my clinic and I was just like, oh crap. Oh man. So it was because my really good friend was like, these are the facts of your life. And it's a friend of mine for a decade. Like, he's like, these are the facts. And I was like, well, if he's a narcissist, that means I'm something. So what's the other side of that coin? You know, and I know the answer to that. I'm very well versed in narcissism. So I was like, okay, so if I'm going to say this guy is this, then I need to look in the mirror and say, okay, but what does that make me? Because I knew at that point I had no control over him. I had no contact with him. So there was nothing I can do to fix him or fix the situation, which I'm typically the fixer. And so then the only thing I could fix was me.
Yeah.
And that was the blessing of him ghosting me. Absolutely. That was the blessing of me not knowing how to get a hold of him. And without that, you know, because I just want to be really clear, like, I don't vilify, even though he's kind of an a-hole in my mind. Like, I'm not going to also like bypass and say he's a good guy, but like, he's not the villain of this story. You know, if anybody pulled the wool over my eyes, it was just me. Yeah. So, I just want to, really,
you know,
about that.
Sorry, Heather, the blessing of the clarity that you got from, as a result of this relationship, is exactly what you've built this magical life on. So there is no, like, he's not the villain. It's like, definitely not vilifying. And I think also acknowledging that, you know, anyone that has any sort of addiction will more than likely have trauma, which is the gateway to addiction. So, you know, we're not at all saying, there's a victim and a perpetrator here. And I think what wisdom you were able to offer yourself as a result of him not being around. So for you not to be focusing on him and what I could fix or what I could try and do better to make him better or whatever, like that emotional over responsibility. So what a freaking gift. And amen to the friend who sat down and went, let me just read it anyway. Confronting, but freeing. So much
and I know that that's a term that can be overused right now. It's a little trendy to call people who have hurt us or traumatized us certain words. But from a clinical diagnosis perspective, like, he truly has narcissistic traits, and the way that he left is very characteristic of a narcissist, because not only did he leave by ghosting and not actually doing the whole emotional and intelligent piece of confrontation and sharing that something's hard is happening. But also he had already moved on to his next ideal mate, right? So that is classic narcissistic behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Could you I want to get to what happened as a result. But if someone's listening and going, okay, I've heard this term narcissism, and I agree with you, well overused and incorrectly used a lot of the time, or they've heard the term codependency or even trauma bonding, and they want to start questioning, reading, researching, looking in. You've mentioned the Melody Beattie book. Is there something else? What other resources would you recommend that someone kind of starts with the, you know, the teasing out of the, is this what I'm dealing with or not? Because, yeah.
That was really the main book that I participated in. That was really eye-opening for me. And then I continued to listen to some of her other audiobooks. And then even recently re-listening as I'm like, am I slipping into old patterns here? Because that's just natural. You know, that is not to like judge oneself, because I am 180 degrees from where I was when all of this was happening. But still, there's some tendencies there for me. So I always have to check in about my level of caregiving and externalization of care. And that's a constant thing for me. So if you're questioning if codependency is something that would be helpful for you to examine, which I think for most modern women, there's a lot about our roles that we are encouraged to be codependent. So for me, codependency showed up as over caregiving, caring about other people's needs in front of my own. And then I remember like the clearest thing of my degree of codependency was when I finally had access to our bank accounts again. I went grocery shopping, and I stood in the middle of the grocery store and I started crying because I didn't know how to grocery shop for myself. I had always done compromise grocery shopping, you know, well, what can I make for dinner for both of us that like we would both eat? Not what I like, but what he likes, but that I will also eat, because there was a lot of foods on his eat list that I wouldn't eat, like sandwich meats and things like that. So I got so used to like having this compromised life. And then I also didn't know what I wanted to watch on TV, because there was like a few shows that I watched for myself, but a lot of like the shows and the movies and things that we would watch was compromise. You know, it wasn't something I really wanted. It was just like, well, it's good enough. And he likes it. So I guess this is what we'll do. And so that is what happened. I created this compromised life for myself where I was always taking into account what the other person wanted or what the other person enjoyed or what the other person would prefer. And then I would adjust my needs and wants to that. And so that's classic codependency. The dark side of codependency, the shadow side of codependency, which is the side that really blocked me from seeing my codependent self, is fierce independence. And Melody Beattie talks about this in her book. So how could I be codependent if I'm fiercely independent? If I'm so like, I'm a strong woman, I can do all these things. I have my own business. I'm educated. I went to school. Like I checked all these check boxes. I was in the space of like being an expert in my field. I was speaking at big conferences, traveling alone. I, went to Bali with you by myself and even spent extra time there by myself. So I had this false sense of non-codependence, but as there's a shadow side to everything, this fierce independence where you are so dedicated to being on your own, taking care of everything yourself, not asking for help, though that is also codependency. It's just the shadow side of codependency.
This is something that I've only really gotten clear with. Like you're saying, fiercely independent. I'm like 2 hands up, 2 hands, 2 legs, everything. And what I've been realizing very much recently is that it's like such a it's such a persona. Like, it isn't the true part of ourselves. It's that, I can't depend on anyone else because I always make their needs more important. So I'm going to have this fiercely independent, I can freaking do anything. I'm, strong, powerful, educated, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, I never, ever understood that was the flip side of the over caregiving that I was trained to do as a kid, like conditioned to do as a kid. And what a gift, though. What a gift.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you're the caregiver, you can't have other people care for you. If you're the codependent, you can't receive care for yourself.
Correct.
And that's what creates this false sense of fierce independence.
Mm-hmm.
So then I had to really think about, what does cooperation look like? What does community look like for me? What does what does this pendulum coming to center, not to the codependent side or the fiercely independent side, but what does this center space of giving help and receiving help, knowing my own needs and speaking what my needs and desires are,
yes,
and having that respected and received by somebody else, and also hearing their needs and desires and with compassion saying, you know what, that's not really my thing today. I'm going to pass.
Yes.
So my work was coming to that center space. And that is where I still do my work, is trying to maintain that center space of that give and take. And here in Peru, they really use the word aini in Quechua, which means reciprocity, which means I might need something today, but you'll need something tomorrow. It's how they describe it. So that's part of why it's so important for me to be here in this land, in this moment, because that reciprocity is part of the vibration and fabric of the communities here.
All right. So we've left the story, the physical plane story, as like the house has got a hole in it. You're redecorating, you're creating a sanctuary. We now know you're in Peru right now. And I have to say, unless you see this photo on Instagram, I'm going to describe Heather is in this beautiful, it feels to me like you're in this really safe cocoon type of thing. There's a raw stone wall behind you. And your energy is just very peaceful and glowing. And it just feels like you've come to a place of balance, actually. That would be the word. Harmony was the word that I was going to bring. So how did you end up in Peru? What happened in between those two states? Probably so much.
A lot of therapy. I started a women's group where we met for full moons, because I really felt the need for being surrounded by a sisterhood.
Yes.
And that was a really important piece of my healing. So I had full moon ceremonies and meditations at my house every month. And and then there was a lot of reading and introspection and journaling and friends. I had to figure out what I liked and didn't like. And I had to put things on my social calendar for the first time in a long time, because I didn't have to do that. I always had plans before. So I learned a lot. So those were the steps that I took. It just was really an exploration of what I liked and didn't like. And then the thing that really flipped my life to where it is now is one of my friends invited me to an ayahuasca ceremony. And I had already done 3 years of work around it. Had been some time since my ex-husband had left. And so I was like, okay, well, we'll see what happens here. I had some premonitions about the person who was holding the space for ayahuasca. And I had some premonitions about this person entering my life from South America. It was in the middle of COVID when travel was stopped. And my same friend who I was like, who was like, let me read you the ICD-10 code for this. I said, I came in one day to our office and I was like, I had the weirdest dream last night. There was this man standing in my living room and I described him like he's tall, he's this, that, he's from South America, he's this, that, blah, blah, blah. And my friend wisely, just openly ended said, well, who do you think he was? Because I wasn't afraid. Sometimes you have these kinds of dream time things and it freaks you out. You're like, yes, my house. It wasn't like that. And I was like, I don't know. And so I just like let the words come out. I was like, I'm not going to try to think about this logically. I was like, I don't know. I think he's my next teacher. I think it was my next teacher. And then I immediately, the logic kicked in and I was like, how in the world is my next teacher from South America going to connect with me when we're in the middle of a pandemic? Like we weren't even in the middle of it. We thought we were in the middle of it then, but we were probably like 1/4 of the way through.
It's so funny, isn't it? Looking back.
And then my friend invited me to this ayahuasca ceremony. And I at first said, no, I didn't. I thought it sounded like too many people and I didn't know how safe it was going to be. Yes. I had a lot of reservations about it. And then I had the flash of the person standing in my living room come to my mind's eye. And I was like, hold on, what does this guy look like? Does he look like this, this, and this, and this? And she was like, oh my gosh, you're describing him exactly. Oh. Let me send you a picture of him. I took a picture of him after ceremony and I was like, okay. And she sent a picture and I recognized him. Wow. She sent me links to the Icaros that he sings during ceremony. And I could immediately sing along to the songs. And I was like, okay, I'm coming. Yep. Okay, I'll go. I don't know how I could say no to this. So that was really a transformational event in my life. It was 3 days, 3 nights of ceremony in a row. And my life has never been the same since. And that was several years ago now.
Far out. So how long, talk a little bit more about the ceremony part of things. Cause I know there's been a lot, like this has become more and more like, a commonly discussed thing, but I have to say, and I was just saying to you before we started recording, someone else that I just interviewed was talking about a toad venom ceremony space. And she actually had quite a transformative, but at the time, very scary experience. So can you speak a little bit about not the process so much, but what the point of the plant medicine ceremonies are? Not the point. That sounds so cerebral, doesn't it? You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Yeah. I think I can get the gist. So for me, I was going into the plant medicine ceremony knowing what had transpired for me over the past 3 years, knowing that I was starting to kind of sort of emerge from the caterpillar goo, like not emerging from the cocoon at all, but putting the goo back together in somewhat of a solid state. Yes. So I knew that I still needed support in that. And I knew that there was still pieces of the goo that needed to be examined. And so plant medicine is just one of many ways to examine that. I also held this intention that I was having a challenge in moving forward in pieces of my divorce. Not because I had any desire to reconcile with my ex, but I felt like I still feel this way. Marriage is a spiritual contract. It's as much of a spiritual contract as it is a legal contract. Yeah, absolutely. And I was really struggling with how to unwind from a spiritual contract that I had made with another soul. Yeah. And so I came to ayahuasca with these questions, how I didn't think that question was going to be answered. I thought that wasn't going to like unwinding our soul contract. I thought that wasn't really going to be addressed until our physical plane paperwork was done. Yes. But ayahuasca had different plans for me and gratefully so. I mean, it just released me so much. So that is part of my ayahuasca experience, it was 3 nights. My first ceremony, the way that the ceremony is that in the mestizo tradition, which is this tradition that I've now studied and now participate in other people's journeys. In the mestizo tradition, we open with rape, which is a tobacco snuff that helps clear some of the energetic channels. The first time I did rape, I felt it traveling through the gallbladder meridian in Chinese medicine and just like flush my entire body. So we open with rape, we start with some song, and then you take your first cup of the medicine ayahuasca, which is a combination of the ayahuasca vine and the chacruna leaves brewed together. And so it's like a tea isn't really the right description. It's more like a honey or something. It's a little thicker than tea water. And then you go to your mat and you have a very internal process. They're doing certain things during the ceremony. They blow mapacho on you. They use the chacapa leaves to cleanse you and give you a blessing. And they also pass agua florida, which is a flower water to help bring in sweetness and sweet scents, sweet beings into your experience. So that first night, for some people, this would be terrifying, but for me, it was very relieving. The first night I died in my ceremony.
This is the same thing that happened. Yes. Anyway, continue.
And for me, that didn't freak me out because I dealt with death and dying all the time. Because I had a cancer clinic. Yes. And so this is not a topic that was scary to me. I've thought about my own death many times and how I might approach that. I've read, I had a whole bookshelf, like a whole 4-tier bookshelf on death and dying. So dying in ceremony wasn't so scary for me, but it allowed me to really get some distance from everything that had happened in my life up until that point and really let it go and see how nonsensical most of it was, and including things from childhood and then also my marriage imploding and my life imploding. And then in that process, I saw like the star, you know, there's that quote that we're made of stardust. Yes. And I saw the stardust that I was, the little flecks of light that I was, and I could see the flecks of light in my DNA. And one of the thoughts around ayahuasca is that there's these little doctorcitos. So there are these little doctors that are allies of ayahuasca that can come in and heal your body. And so these little doctors were coming in and healing and removing things from my DNA. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. What are you removing? Yes. And it's like, oh, we're removing all the things that are blocking love from entering your life. Yes. And I was like, thank God. Yeah, take it all. Yeah, exactly. You know, and I would see little flashes of memories of things that were big traumas, little traumas that would make a person build walls of protection around themselves. And then there was then they started working on my liver and they pulled out this sack of stars from my liver. And I was like, what is that? It was so interesting. And it was like one of the most beautiful things I had ever seen. And the answer I got back was, oh, this is your sacred contract with your ex. Oh. And I was like, oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, thank you.
I am released. Thank you for taking
and not only am I released, but it was a beautiful thing. Yeah. You know, it didn't, like I said, don't ever want to vilify his role in any of this. And I saw how beautiful our sacred contract was, and I could cry about it now just thinking about it. So I got to observe the beauty of that connection while I was also being repaired of all of the harm and damage and hurt that also came with that beauty. So that was my first night. And, there were some other things that had happened. And then my second night was very much like being cradled in the arms of love. I went back to a time in my life where my favorite thing in the world was being rocked in my dad's rocking chair up against his chest and hearing his heartbeat. And we had this ritual where that was part of my every night life until I was probably too big to actually fit in his rocking chair anymore, but we still did it. And I was taken back to that, and I was being rocked in the rocking chair, hearing the heartbeat of my dad, who is deceased, and reconnecting with that unconditional love. And the whole ceremony was about kind of refilling in that unconditional love that was always available to me, and that I, through my codependency, didn't receive, through my fierce independence, didn't receive. And so that was really transformational. And that was just like one bit of that night, but super transformational. And then by the third night, I was invited by the medicine to sit up and watch the ceremony. And I could visually see how, when people were drinking the ayahuasca brew, drinking the medicine, how it was going into their body and going in different places for each person who was drinking. And I got to see the magic of this particular medicine. And I got to see some of the other beings that were related to some of the icaros that were being sung for our healing and our protection. And I got to see some dark things too. It's not all love and light in the ayahuasca ceremony, but it was a really beautiful experience to really witness ayahuasca and to be invited to witness it in that way. And that was the beginning of the end for me. I changed my life completely. One of the words that was used a lot in ceremony to prepare people, and I use it too, to prepare people for plant medicine, is surrender. You have to surrender to the medicine. And then I just started surrendering to life after that, and not planning, just going with what felt good next for me. And as a 5-year, 10-year planner, like these are all the things I'm going to tick off in the next quarter, in the next 6 months, in the next year, by 20, whatever, I'm going to be that concept of surrender was so foreign to me. And so being able to surrender was really a reflection of me healing that fierce independence and that coping mechanism. Because if that wasn't healed, then I wouldn't have been able to drop the goals, right? I wouldn't have been able to drop the to-do list and just show up for my life. So that led to me here. That led me to saying yes to, there's many things that had happened, but the shaman that had served us, who was from South America, is from Peru, invited me to travel with him. It was in the height of COVID, so it was helpful to have a physician travel with him. And it was also helpful for him to have a physician that was a North American physician in Peru that made people who were traveling to the jungle or traveling to the Sacred Valley feel safe. Like if they were to get COVID, at least there's a doctor here. So he invited me to travel with him to Peru, and I did. And then he invited me to travel with him all over the world serving ayahuasca, which I did. And so all in all, I spent about a year with him, and until it was time for that cycle of my life to be completed. And I landed back here in Peru and opened what I'm doing now, which is a plant medicine retreat center, and helping other people go through their dark night of the soul and get to the other side with the support and insights from ayahuasca mostly, and sometimes wachuma.
Ah, my goodness. My goodness. First of all, thank you for sharing all of that, because I find myself incredibly curious about this plant medicine thing, because I think I'm very much relating to the to-do list and then being invited to surrender. And I'm very aware that there's, going back to your stars in your DNA type of thing. I actually had, it's funny, not funny, perfect, we're having this conversation. A few nights ago, there's been big pivotal things happening in my life at the moment, and a lot of them are colliding. And I'm like, okay, I'm obviously in that stage where there's big shifts, and I do feel more comfortable with just surrendering and letting go. But the other night I had a lot of trouble sleeping on the full moon, and I had these like multiple, when you go to sleep, you dream a bit, you wake up, and then you're like, all right, I'm dream a bit more. And I actually was dreaming about someone I said to my husband, it was like someone was doing surgery, just pulling out these bits and then putting back these bits and whatever. And you're saying this, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it was exactly the same sort of thing. On the third night of your journey, you're invited to be the witness. And then obviously life unfolds, you go ahead and you are the witness. What would you, and I know it's hard to put into words because it's so much more than words, but what would you say are the common things, not common, but like the threads of things that are repaired during that sort of journey or that come to light? So people go through this horrible cocoony thing, whatever, but what keeps us in the cocoon? I guess that's my question. So what keeps us, in your experience of all these plant medicine journeys, from being wild and free?
Fear.
Mm-hmm.
That really keeps us from being wild and free.
Yep.
And fear can sound like kind of a cop out, especially when we talk about like spiritual bypassing and stuff.
Yeah.
Because fear is a helpful emotion. Let's be honest. If I honored some more of my fears, I maybe would have circumvented parts of my story. But what I see a lot is not just fear of like, the unknown, which is like a common thing to blame, like why we're not taking positive action in our life.
Yes.
But also the fear of like, well, what is somebody else going to think of me if I live my life this way? And what is going to happen to my relationships if I shift in this way?
Yes.
So those are the bigger fears that I see people carry with them into ceremony and keeping people in their cocoon. And when you practice surrender and you get some of the messages about the beautiful side of being human, or the really shadowy, dark, yucky side of being human, I think you're shown things in ayahuasca ceremonies that doesn't allow you to
go back
doing what you've been doing.
Yeah.
I mean, you could, like, let's be honest. You could just be like, oh, that was a weird night, and go back to your normal life, air quote normal.
Yes.
But most people are coming to plant medicine because they know that they need a shift, or they're curious about their own nature. And so it's rare to see those things and really just go back to normal. I think like for me, and I've heard this from other people as well, one of the most impactful ceremonies I had, and I drink a lot of ayahuasca. I mean, I was traveling with the shaman. We were serving ayahuasca all over the world. I was supported over 1,000 people going through their plant medicine journeys. And one of my most important ceremonies ever, I was being shown how I was getting hard on myself for being messy. I was always the woman who had it together. I had the to-do list together. I had my life together. I held everything. I held other people together, like I had it together and had my emotions together. And through like continually going through ceremony after ceremony after ceremony, I started getting more and more and more messy and more and more and more emotional. And part of it was because I saw the beauty of people opening their emotions in ceremony. And I wanted to be more like that. Like I, even to this day, have a hard time crying. And I know that that's a positive way to express
process. Yeah.
You know, and so I was exploring these emotions of what it's like to be human. And yet I was being hard on myself for being messy. And I carried the title of Miss Messy of our team. They lovingly and teasingly would call me Miss Messy. Like,
yeah.
You know, and I would put on my Miss Messy sash, and sometimes we would have a fake award ceremony for how messy I was. And I would say my little Miss Messy speech, like, I like to thank the man that I had a relationship for 20 years who suddenly left me. I would like to thank the first guy that I dated afterwards who holed himself up in my house and I had to call the cops to get him to leave.
Oh, wow.
I'd like to thank my peers who keeps making me drink psychedelics, you know, to all of the people who have supported me on this path to being Miss Messy. I'm forever grateful, you know, and we would just do this every once in a while when I was like at a breaking point. And I was being hard on myself, and ayahuasca was showing me the rehumanizing process and how there was so much of my life where I was teaching myself, and I was also being taught by my medical mentors and other parts of my life to dehumanize not only my clients, my patients, but also myself, and become more and more and more like a machine, more and more robotic, more and more productive, more and more together. And that wasn't embracing the beauty of being human. And so I had to swing to this messy place, because to be human is to be messy.
Yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't have to be so messy like I was being, but I just had to experience it to that level to find balance between like having it all together and being Miss Messy. Yeah.
Pendulum swinging and finding the balance. So good. Let's talk about what you've created in Peru. So you've gone on this year, I want to say apprenticeship. I don't know whether you would use that word, but that sort of learning and experiencing and all of that wisdom passing on, I want to say. I don't know whether that's the right way of saying it. So you have this retreat center. Everyone that is listening has to go onto Heather's Instagram and look at all of her Peru photos, and also there's some videos of part of the ceremonies and things like that. I was marinating in it before, and I'm like, oh, my heart wants to go to Peru. I'm like, oh, let's do a wild and fucking free podcast family trip to Heather's retreat center.
Absolutely. Please come. You're so invited to my house.
I would be so down with that. So let's talk about Hampuy House. So when did this creation pop into the physical plane, first of all?
Yeah. So this, just less than 9 months ago, maybe 6 months ago.
Wow.
So, and this is part of being in the surrender. I think when you're in surrender, which is sometimes also called flow, but I always felt flow for me was a little forced. So when I'm in surrender, it can allow things to show up and transpire in a way that I would never predict or I guess part of surrender is also for me as like a high achiever, as a recovering high achiever, I guess, as a recovering workaholic, high achiever.
Yeah.
Surrender also takes out striving. So I had to let go of striving for certain things, trying to hit certain goals, because in my dive with codependency and how I got where I was, part of like setting goals and hitting them was part of what kept me in the loop of not seeing my life as it really was.
Yep, absolutely.
So, so I did not a goal to open a retreat center. Opening a retreat center was a dream on my heart for 22 plus years.
Yep.
But I wasn't like, okay, I'm going to move to Peru and open a retreat center and then do this and then do that. No, what had happened is I was still Miss Messy. I was still in my Miss Messy phase. I think I've passed on the crown to somebody else. I don't know who. If you want to put in the chat, if you think it's you, I would love to support you through your Miss Messy 2022, 2023. But I had not emerged from that yet when I landed in Peru. And somebody who had a personal vendetta against me threatened to turn me into the DEA, which is the Drug Enforcement Agency in the United States, and turn me into my medical board for studying with the shaman that I was studying with and traveling with him. And so I called my lawyers, and at that point, it was advised that I don't return to the US, or that if I did return to the United States, then a case could be made against me. But if I was out of the US, they couldn't serve me, is it what my lawyer said. So
talk about door closing, family. It's like,
yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was my second day in Peru, and or maybe the first, like not even 48 hours. And so I hung up the phone and looked at my partner and I said, okay, I'm not going back to the United States. And he was like, whoa.
Hang on a minute. Back it up, sister.
Like, I don't know, like, cause I had met somebody while I was touring with a shaman, and this person was playing the music and the ceremonies, and also has been assisting in ayahuasca ceremonies for 5 years. And I wasn't looking for a relationship, but we had connected, and we were just coming here for for him to come back home to his son and his family, and for me to just like take a 2-week breather and then go back to the US.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I'm not going back. I was like, it's like we're jumping too many steps in a relationship here.
Slower, please.
Like, it's okay. Like, you don't have to commit to anything with me staying here, but I'm staying here. So I need to like find a place to live and stuff.
Yes.
And in finding a place to settle here, something that had come up on a Facebook group was this Airbnb that somebody was turning over and wanted to sell all of the contents within the Airbnb, and we would rent the land from the same landowner that he had a relationship with. And I was like, let's go look at it. Let's go look at it. And I was like, no, it's too much money. It's too this, it's too that. I'm like, let's just go look at it. Let's just go look at it. Because everything else is being like, we're just bumping against all these walls. And I just, maybe this will be easy. Let's just go look.
Yes.
And so we went and we looked, and so here I am. I have, we have 3 houses and a total of 9 rooms and 2 or 3 kitchens and a beautiful garden, mountain views, and it all worked out. And so it's just a really sweet, simple space. We can't have ginormous retreats here, which is perfect for us. So it's really intimate, which I think is somewhat missing in the plant medicine space, to have like our ceremonies, our space max is at 10 to 12 people. So it's more intimate. And we just finished our first retreat, which had 6 people from Colorado come here and share space. And it's just been kind of like, some of my friends are like, oh, this is so easy. And I'm like, I really like, by dropping the striving and just showing up for each next step, like seeing a Facebook post about your podcast and being like, okay, I could talk about that. Like, that seems like something I could talk about. Yeah. And just taking that next thing that's being put in front of me, next door that's being opened, has led me to where we are at right now, which looks like a, fast growing retreats. I don't call it a retreat center. I call it a retreat house, because it's just a little more quaint.
I really love so many things about what you're saying, because I'm very, very drawn to the plant medicine end of things. As soon as I heard it in the last podcast, I was like, ooh, exactly that same, like that pull from the center of my chest I get when it's like, oh, yeah, there's something here for you. And then when I was looking at your photos before, I was like, oh, it's like cozy and homey, and there's this beautiful view, and you've got a video of this light shining through as like you're walking, like there's plants on one side and stone walled house on the other side, but this light is, and I'm just like, oh my God, it's just magical. It felt magical. I was like, I'm so excited about having this conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I know I've got like 500 other questions, but let's leave it with a key thing. So if you're a woman, you're listening to this podcast and you're going, sure, she's ended up having this magical life, but, you know, I've got this, that, blah, 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 whatever. What would be the key piece of invitation or inspiration that you'd like to give in terms of, I think, sorry, I'm going to make this question a very long one, but going way back to what you said at the very beginning, you said, I didn't actually, when you were saying you were crying in the grocery store, I didn't actually know how to be living life from my core desires, needs, etc. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that are in the same space. What would your takeaway or invitation be to those people?
My invitations. So this was an assignment that my therapist gave me. And the assignment was to put aside at least 4 hours every week where I was just using that space by myself to explore what I like and what I don't like.
Yeah.
And so I would use those 4 hours to go to an art show. I would use those 4 hours to take a class. I would use those 4 hours to try a restaurant. I would use those 4 hours to sit at home and journal. Sit at home and paint or whatever it was. So that was a really important invitation to me, is just to explore, just give myself permission to explore what it is that lights me up, and and since it was only with me, for me, then I didn't have to take anybody's wants, needs, or desires into account. I wasn't planning brunch with a friend and being like, okay, well, halfway between your house and my house is this place. You know, like, no, I was just going by myself and
pleasing myself
and figuring it out what I like without being influenced by anybody else. And that was a really powerful practice. And it's very practical too. It's like anybody can do this in any part of their life. If you have kids, if you don't have kids, if you're working full time, like, you can fit in 4 hours to figure out who the heck you are.
Who the heck you are. I was going to say, who the
those 4 hours are worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. I'm so glad that you did not listen to your nerves enough to say, actually, no, I won't come and share, because as I expected, you sharing your story is going to be such an invitation for people that are, maybe aware they're a bit disconnected. Maybe there's a bit of a codependency question forming and or they're in the trauma tunnel and they're like, what is my life going to look like after all this, what I like to call clusterfuckery happens, the messy stage. So deeply grateful. And I would say I'll be seeing you soon. I have a feeling. It's such a beautiful experience for me to have, like, you and I were talking about retreats when we were in Bali, and I know that that's been a long held dream. And when we had that conversation, it was very, this is what, this is a structure I think it's going to be, and these are the steps, and I'm going to work towards this and whatever. And to actually see you land right back where that desire was, but through this magical surrender process, is just such a gift, such a Yes. Reminder to everybody listening. So a deep bow of gratitude. How can we find you online? I will link all of this gold underneath, but you have 2 different Instagram accounts. So
yeah, so one of my Instagram accounts is Dr. Heather Paulson, DR, and then my name, Heather Paulson. Yep. And that's where I really share about some of the more practical sides or kind of different sides of ayahuasca, plant medicine integration, kind of dark night of the soul information is on my Dr. Heather Paulson Instagram handle. And then my other Instagram is Hampuy House, which is a weird word. I know it's Quechua, and Quechua is a old language that dates back to the Incan times and is still used in the Andes Mountains. And so it's spelled Hampuy, Hampuy House. And Hampuy means it's an invocation. It's what they use, the Carol-Pacos use to open ceremony. And it means to come. And we're inviting the Apus, the Pachamama, we're inviting the spirits to come. And we're also inviting you to come and experience it. This truly is a magical space. I never believed that there was magical spaces like this, like outside of Hawaii. And, it really is an enchanted place. It's called the Sacred Valley for a reason, where I live in Urubamba.
I cannot wait to see it.
Yeah, we're like less than 30 minutes from the train that takes people to Machu Picchu. So that's the imagery. If you're listening and you're thinking like, where in Peru is this? If you've seen images of Machu Picchu, the whole valley carries a similar look and vibe.
Yeah, that's exactly the vibe I was getting looking through your beautiful Instagram. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This has been such a gift. And just honoring, particularly when you feel a little bit tentative about sharing that, the healing that you're offering everyone else. So, and yourself, perhaps.
Yes. Thank you for opening this space up. I mean, I do believe that sharing our stories is part of our own healing process. Absolutely. So I'm grateful for this next part of my healing process, and for everybody who's listening. Thank you for being a part of it. And I hope to also be a part of your healing process as well.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Thank you. Well, there you have it, beautiful one. Another inspirational episode. And thank you so much to our guest from today for sharing their journey and leap of faith. So many takeaways, as always. I would love to know what your favorite thing that we discussed or that hit you between the eyeballs to invite you into your own expansion or leap of faith was. Share it on Instagram or Facebook. You'll find me at Kylie Patchett. And I would love it and be so honored if you take the time to leave a review on any of your favorite podcast platforms about this show or the podcast in general. And finally, if you have someone in your life who is another midlife maven who may just need some reminding that she is a powerful, magnetic, amazing woman and that she absolutely deserves the life that she craves, please share us. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.